Hello everyone, Charles Watts here, the Arsenal correspondent at Goal, joining you on Saturday. I hope you're having a very good start to the weekend, wherever you're watching this around the world. Arsenal not in action today. Of course, we have to wait till tomorrow. Arsenal versus Brighton at the Emirates. Manchester City playing just before that at Goodison Park. So big day in the title race tomorrow. Mikel Arteta obviously had his press conference yesterday previewing that game. Quite a lot of interesting stuff came from that. A lot of the stuff was embargoed from the 10:30 quotes. So you might not have seen them. They certainly wouldn't have been doing the rounds on the sort of TV clips that you saw yesterday. So I wanted to go through a few of those. We'll look at the latest team news ahead of the Brighton game. We'll end, of course, with a predicted 11 for the match. So quite a lot of interesting stuff, I thought, from Mikel in his press conference yesterday, in the 10:30pm stuff especially. He talked a lot about the sort of project process, whatever you want to call it, and where Arsenal are right now. And it's what I said, we are still very, very far from where he wants Arsenal to be. We can be much, much, much better at a lot of things, huge margins. We can be much better in terms of build-up, attacking man-to-man situations, open spaces, defending deep set pieces. We have huge margins to do in terms of game management. A lot of things we can still do much better. We can be more ruthless to kill games. It's a lot of things we have to see for improvement because we don't have a single player who has reached his peak, not one. And when that happens, we as coaches have to be curious to understand what we can do to get them better. Now, the thing with Arteta, and he speaks to a lot of people, and obviously I'm writing this book about him and Arsenal at the moment, and I've spoken to a lot of people who have sort of worked with him, are working with him, and they all say the same thing about him, the sort of drive to improve. There's no stopping. There's no sort of, how do I describe it? There's no settling when it comes to Arteta. He's always looking to improve. He's always looking how they can improve these margins to make it, how he can make things better. When I hear him talk like this, it kind of, everything that people tell me about him, it makes me think, oh yeah, that's what they're talking about. That's what they're talking about. There's no settling. It's all about improving. And he's right. Lots of things. Arsenal, as much as they have improved this season, and they have dramatically improved. They win the last 3 games. They finished with 90 points. That's level with the Invincibles. Whatever happens in terms of the title race, improvement has been so dramatic and so stark. No one would have expected this at the start of the season. But he's not going to settle for that. He wants Arsenal to improve. And they will. Like he said, no one's reached their peak yet. This is such a young team. Everyone can go up a level. The signings that we're going to see this summer are going to take the team and the squad up another level, and I think that's the most exciting thing. And again, whatever happens this season, if Arsenal don't end up winning the league, which is going to be hugely disappointing if they don't, having led it for so long, and it's going to take a long time to get over, but there's still so much to be excited about. And I think when you hear Arteta talk about this, and from what I hear from other people who work with him, is that he's not going to be settling. He is going to be so determined to take this group up to the next level. And I think that's a really exciting thing to think about. And he was asked, have you been holding back ideas that he thinks the squad is not quite ready for? Things he wants to do that he doesn't think they're ready for yet. And he said, yes, at the end, they are the protagonists. We have to try and give them the tools that they know how to manipulate. If not, we're going to have to put them in certain positions that they are not going to be comfortable. There are moments to put the players in those moments, and now is not the moment to do that, in my opinion. So he said he's got big plans for this squad and how he can take them on more. And again, I think that's an exciting thing, because this squad, I think we've just touched the surface of what this Arsenal team can do. And again, when I look towards the summer and look towards the players that Arsenal are going to try and bring in, I think it's going to take it all up to another level. And it's going to have to, because Arsenal are in the Champions League next year. And knowing Arteta like I do, and having spoken again to lots of people who know him very, very well and a lot better than I do, he is not going to want to settle just for being in the Champions League next season. He's going to want to attack it, and he's going to want to perform and show that Arsenal deserve to be there. And he says that a lot. He was actually asked yesterday, are you excited about the Champions League? And he said, yes, it's a different level, another level. You see the presence of the players, the charisma, how they handle the occasion. It's just magnificent. We want to be really in the Champions League, representing our club in the right way. So we need to seek to get to that level. There's no secret. If you want to be that level, you need certain ingredients to be there. He's talking about players there, obviously. It's great to be in it, but that's just the first step. Once that's done, you have to think about how we want the club to be represented at that stage. It's very different demands. That's a message there to the owners, to everyone. He doesn't want Arsenal just to be in the Champions League. He wants to represent Arsenal the way he feels like they should be represented in the Champions League. And that's by doing well and getting to the latter stages and going up against the big teams and competing against the big teams. I think that's an awful lot of what I took from this press conference yesterday and his comments on it It was just the drive to keep improving. He's not going to settle, and I think that's the thing to be excited about going into next season and going into the summer. As disappointing as it'll be if Arsenal miss out on the title, I think there's a lot to be excited about, and that's what I took away from that. But let me know what you guys think from what he's had to say in those comments. Are you pleased to hear him talk like that? What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Other stuff he talked about contracts, which basically said, look, it's not the time to talk about contracts. He doesn't want the distraction. He said it's not the moment to talk about that. Where we are with each individual is probably different in terms of timing, but the clarity is there. They know we have communicated to each of them what our intentions are and what we're trying to get done as quickly as possible, but respecting and without losing any focus on the right deal to do now. Aaron Ramsdale's going to be done soon. Bukayo Saka's going to be done soon. Hopefully William Saliba's going to be done soon. But there's lots of other contracts that need sorting. But at this stage of the season, when the title's on the line, it's not ideal to be just being swamped by all this contracts talk. So I can understand why he was keen not to really talk about that. He was pressed on Granit Xhaka's future yesterday with all the stories about Xhaka potentially going back to Germany, and he said, look, I'm really happy with Granit. He said, look, out of respect, I'm not going to talk about it, but I'm really happy with Granit. He's having his best season probably ever, and we're really happy with him. He certainly didn't deny any of the stories or anything like that, but he wasn't really in the mood to talk about it. And again, when he was pressed on like Ramsdale's contract, he wouldn't name names or anything like that. It was just like, when we're ready to announce something, we'll announce it. But I expect that will happen fairly soon when it comes to him and Bukayo Saka as well. Some interesting stuff I thought from him on Brighton. Obviously, Arsenal have taken a couple of players from Brighton recently in Ben White and Leandro Trossard. They tried to sign Caicedo in January. Didn't happen. They might well go back for him this summer. We'll have to wait and see on that. There's lots of other players, McAllister. Brighton have been a brilliant club to follow in terms of the work they've done in the transfer market and the transfer model they have, signing players, developing them, selling them on for big money. Mikel was talking about that in his press conference, and he was asked about, should Arsenal or other teams replicate what Brighton have done? Are they the club to replicate? And he said, you cannot replicate. I think the model that Brighton has is great for Brighton. We cannot have that same model. We have to have a different model. I'm sure there are things that we can apply to our model that they do extremely well, but they have different demands. They're a different size of club, probably a different approach as well. It'd be a massive mistake, in my opinion, to try and do that. And he's right. It's very easy to look at what Brighton do, what Brentford do, and say, why don't all the other big clubs do that? Why do they just wait until Brighton and Brentford develop these players and then sign them for big money? But he's right, you can't do that. If you're a big club competing for the Premier League, competing for the Champions League, potentially, you can't just be this sort of development ground for players and wait for them to develop. They have to be ready to hit the level now. I mean, Arsenal have done that. They have developed players, which is great, but they did that more out of necessity than anything else because of kind of the level they got to, how far they'd fallen. I think now you can't really do that, and it's just the way of the world. It's the natural order of football clubs, isn't it, that the smaller clubs can be able to give these players time to develop them and under not amount the same sort of pressure as throwing them in. Say you signed Matoma, or you'd signed Ben White straight from Leeds and threw him straight into Arsenal or something like that. You're not. There's no guarantees he's going to develop into the same sort of player because of the immediate demands that he's under and the pressures that he's under. And he's very respectful, I thought, of Brighton, Mikel Arteta. But he's right. You can't compare the two. I don't think you can't compare what City do to what Brighton do. You can't compare what Arsenal do to what Brighton do, or what Chelsea do to what Brighton do. It's just different demands, different expectations, and it's very hard just to replicate it and say that certain clubs should be doing that. Okay, so sort of turning the attention quickly to Sunday's game. Team news for Arsenal: Saliba's out. Obviously, Mikel confirmed that. He didn't confirm that Zinchenko was definitely out. Refused to confirm the reports that he's out for the season, that both players are out for the season. As expected with Mikel, he always says that, but the expectations are they are. But he did definitely say Saliba's definitely out this game, and Zinchenko's not going to play in it either. Obviously, Noel Nenny, he's back training on the grass, not with the squad, but he's back training on the grass, but he's not going to play any further part this season. So, there's definitely no Saliba, definitely no Tomiyasu, definitely no Zinchenko, and definitely no El Nenny for tomorrow's game. For Brighton, they're missing a couple of key players as well. Solly March is out, Adam Webster's out, even Ferguson looks like he's fit. The young striker, scored against Arsenal obviously at the Amex, has done very well since that game actually, when he scored his first goal for Brighton. He has been struggling with a bit of an injury, but it looks like he's going to be all right, which is a boost for them. Whether he starts, we'll have to wait and see. Might well be Danny Welbeck. But yeah, I think that certainly missing Solly March is going to be a blow. He did his hamstring against Everton last time out. So that is a bit of a blow for them. De Zerbi was talking about it. He said, we are not in such good condition, but we'll decide on the squad tomorrow. Brighton obviously coming here with a point to prove after that very disappointing result, shock result, freak result against Everton last weekend, losing 5-1. Everton pretty much scoring every shot they had. Brighton didn't score every shot they had because they had plenty of them, but didn't score. On another day, Brighton could have won that. I didn't actually look at the XG in that game, but I can imagine it was a lot closer than the scoreline suggested it was. It was a bit of a freak result, and Brighton are certainly going to want to put that right, and I think they're going to come to the Emirates on Sunday with a bit of fire in their belly. And obviously they're very, very good at the Emirates. They've got a great record there, dating back before De Zerbi. Graham Potter was fantastic for Brighton at the Emirates, always seemed to win there. Brighton have already won there this season in the League Cup, so it's going to be a really difficult game this for Arsenal, and Mikel Arteta was very aware of that when he was speaking in his press conference yesterday. They're going to have to play very, very well to win this game, and it's going to be interesting. Obviously we're going to know the Manchester City result by the time Arsenal kick off that City-Everton games earlier in the afternoon. So whether City, if City drop points, Arsenal are going to have a lot of pressure on them to take advantage of that. If City win, Arsenal are basically going to have a lot of pressure on them because they're going to have to win just to basically keep the title alive. Because if City win tomorrow and Arsenal don't, it's not mathematically over, but it is going to be over. So there's going to be lots of pressure on Arsenal. Whatever happens in the game, it's going to be a pretty tense affair. Predicted 11 wise, this is what I'm going to go for. Obviously, I don't, this isn't based on anything, as I always said. This is just what I think is going to do. Zinchenko is the big one for Arsenal. No Zinchenko. Will Mikel sort of tweak the system to counter for that? We'll have to wait and see. I think Tierney's definitely going to start, but it's just whether what Mikel does. Does he change formation? Does he change tactics a little bit to allow Tierney just to play as a natural fullback rather than playing as the inverted role that Zinchenko does? We'll have to wait and see. But here's what my predicted 11 is for the game. Ramsdale in goal, back four of Ben White, Kivior, Saliba and Kieran Tierney. Midfield, I'm going Jorginho keeping his place over Thomas Partey after that fantastic performance from him against Newcastle last weekend. Then Granit Xhaka and Martin Odegaard obviously as the two players ahead of Jorginho. And then up front, we know it's going to be Saka, Jesus and Martinelli. I'd be very surprised. Obviously, Trossard playing against his former club. I'm sure he'd love to start, but I'd be very surprised if he does. I think it'll be Saka, Martinelli and Gabriel Jesus leading the line, and then it's just all going to be about what sort of formation Mikel does. Does he tweak things? Does he change things up a little bit? Or does he ask Kieran Tierney to play that inverted role that Zinchenko does, which we've seen him try to do in the past, not very successfully. I thought Tierney against Newcastle last weekend when he came on, he played very much as just a out-and-out fullback, and he looked so good. It was a brilliant 30-minute cameo from Kieran Tierney. Xhaka dropped in a little bit, and I think that's what Tierney needs to do this weekend if he does, as expected, get the nod ahead of Zinchenko. All right, that's it from me. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Please do have a very good weekend. I'll be at the Emirates tomorrow, so follow me for all the usual match action. And until then, have a great weekend. I'll speak to you soon.